The redesigned Razer Blade 16 was actually the first RTX 5000 laptop we got to review on the channel, and while the 5090 did show some impressive performance, given the thinner chassis and not quite maxed out power levels, the question remains if you should really go for the high-end config here. And since the initial launch, we have also been able to review quite a few notebooks betting on Nvidia's second in line, the RTX 5080. And if we are talking games, the difference between the high-end mobile cards is not quite as big as the price difference might suggest. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this premise translates to the Blade, since we've got our hands on a 5080 config which comes in at a whopping $1,000 less than its 5090 counterpart. Let's get into it. In addition to the RTX 5080 with its 16 gigs of video memory and running at the same 160 watts power level as Nvidia's flagship we already tested, downgrading the GPU is unfortunately also tied to a CPU change from the HX 370 to the Ryzen 9 365. That is a bit of an odd choice on Razer's part, but we will see in a little bit what it means for CPU performance. The RAM is of course still soldered, and our sample gets 32 gigs with the option to double the capacity, which also automatically gets you a 2TB SSD instead of the 1TB in this one. Last but not least, you get the same OLED that you will find in every Blade 16, and apart from the less than ideal overall brightness, this is a fantastic panel for both games and work alike. Since we already talked about everything that makes the 16-incher a typical Razer Blade when it comes to its overall design and construction, please check out our initial review from a few months ago or our direct comparison with the Zephyrus G16. I will link both videos in the description below. In short, this is one of the most premium laptops you will be able to get your hands on, boasting a solid array of ports, well-adjusted hinges and a much improved keyboard. There have been some reports and reviews with trackpad problems, but so far our units have not been affected. Just keep in mind that we are talking about press samples here. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about performance. Across all of our CPU tests, the Ryzen 9 365 is sitting not even 10% behind its bigger brother, and in addition to losing 2 full-fledged CPU cores, the iGPU also gets downgraded to the 880 instead of the 890M. If this is something that will affect your overall user experience, once again, really depends on what you are doing. So for me personally, I wouldn't mind. But if you are using a lot of very CPU-heavy applications, it's definitely something you should be aware of. Overall system performance is very good as well, and in PC Mark the 5080 config can even beat its more expensive 5090 powered sibling. In our initial review, I also mentioned that we had some problems with the Ryzen CPU throttling to just 300 MHz occasionally when running on battery, which made everything you do pretty sluggish and almost unusable. Thankfully, that didn't happen with our 5080 sample, and in the meantime, I also got another 5090 variant that worked without a problem. But let's finally see how much GPU performance you actually leave on the table. And right off the bat, in Firestrike, well, not a lot, which is quite surprising considering the additional CPU downgrade that comes with our 5080 config. In Temps the 5090 can score a bigger lead, but again, it's not something I would consider night and day. In the real world and in our 1080p rating, a selection of both older and newer titles, both blades are basically tied once again, which is not a huge surprise given the more CPU-bound nature here. Moving up to QHD changes things though, but if the performance lead of the 5090 is worth the premium you will have to pay, well, that is ultimately for you to decide. But I would say, for games at least, it really isn't, especially considering you have DLSS and FG at your disposal. And I would say for most games, just jumping from DLSS quality to balanced or performance can easily offset any native performance advantages Nvidia's flagship may offer. The biggest gains you will see in 4K of course, so if you have this one connected to an external screen while stationary, it might make sense to shell out the extra cash. That said, even the 5080 config can get you quite far, and as I just mentioned, you still have upscaling and frame generation at your disposal should you dip into less desirable FPS situations in demanding games. As always, if you want all of our numbers across all the games we tested in various settings and resolutions, please head over to our written review on the website. We have a lot more data for this one. Before we wrap it up, how does the 5080 and the slightly slower CPU impact your experience when it comes to temperatures, noise and battery life? Well, to be honest, not a lot, since the Blade nearly netted us the same numbers in our measurements here across the board, and even battery life is literally the same. So is the 5090 Blade 16 worth it? I would say for the vast majority of users, the 5080 is the sweet spot. You pay a lot less, performance is actually pretty comparable, and with 16 gigs of video memory, you should still be well prepared for the next generation of AAA games coming our way. That said, the 5090 is definitely not obsolete, and if you are a creator, for example, or dabble in AI, need the additional encoders, or simply want the highest FPS possible, you will have a hard time finding a more powerful laptop in this sort of form factor. And just speaking for myself here, especially thanks to the very generous ReRAM situation, I would personally get myself a 5090 laptop for our video production, since it really makes a difference in my daily workflow. But not everyone is a creator, of course, and the 5080 Blade is definitely a very attractive option if you're looking for a really well-made, fully featured performance laptop. But as always, let me know what you think. Sound off in the comments below. Thanks a ton for watching, folks. Please leave a like and sub on your way out. My name is Alex. You have been absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.